Hello everyone, and welcome to the Londonderry View, episode 63, and we're very excited to be here today, and we have a really great show. So I'm going to turn everything over to our moderator, Jonathan Kipp.
Thank you, Sherry, and good morning, everyone. I'm Jonathan Kipp. I'm the town moderator here in Londonderry, and we're very fortunate to have our New Hampshire Secretary of State, David Scanlan, here with us today. And our topic is really elections. I'm the chief election official as town moderator here in Londonderry, but Secretary Scanlan, you're the chief election official for the whole state. So what does that entail?
Well, it entails the oversight. First of all, thank you for inviting me to be here today. It's great to see Sherry and Kirby and Jonathan. The role of Secretary of State is the chief election official for the state. And in that role, the office is responsible for the administration of state and federal elections in New Hampshire. And what that means is creating uniform practices among all polling places within the state. We actually produce the ballots that are used on the day of the election. We conduct the recounts after an election is over. And we certify the results of the state and federal races that take place in the state of New Hampshire.
So we're coming into the September 13th primary. You provide the ballots to all the cities and towns. What's the plan for this year? What's your expectation on how many ballots to produce and provide?
Well, the state primary election is actually two elections taking place on the same day. And those elections are to determine the nominees for the Republican Party and the Democratic Party who will run against each other in the general election in November. Typically, the turnout for primaries is lower than a general election, and it's probably in the 20 to 30% turnout range. Obviously, we would like to see voters turn out in higher numbers to pick the nominees for the office. And there are currently just over 800,000 voters on the checklist in the state of New Hampshire. And so I would expect that we will see in the range of 200 to 300,000 voters turn out for the state primary.
Okay.
800,000. That's incredible.
That's a number I didn't know. That's interesting.
What is the average based on past elections or past primaries? The average amount of people, is that pretty average, 200 to 300,000, or?
That percentage.
The percent, oh, sorry, 2 to 3%?
Typical.
Oh, okay.
I would say
Okay.
around 20%,
Okay.
give or take,
All right.
would be a normal turnout for
Okay.
a state
For
primary.
primary.
How about primary compared to general election?
The general election is typically much higher.
Yep.
And in a midterm, we're probably looking at 50 to 60%.
Wow, that's good.
But in
That
a
is
general election where president is on the ballot,
Mhm.
it would be up in the 70
Much higher,
percentile.
yep.
And typically for a presidential election year,
Mhm.
New Hampshire, for the last several presidential election
Mhm.
cycles, has been in the top three
Yeah,
nationwide.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's good. Wow, didn't realize that.
Well,
an
we're
honor.
first in the nation, correct? Or
We
what are
have
we?
the first
First
presidential primary.
I should know this. I've been
No,
involved in
this is
politics
okay.
before.
No,
First presidential primary, that's what I meant.
Kirby
so.
really has been involved
It's been fun.
most of her life.
It's been a
I think,
while since I've
which
been
is-
out of it,
No,
clearly.
yeah, no, that's exciting though.
But very cool. What do you see has been your biggest challenge since going from deputy to Secretary of State?
Well, the buck stops.
Yeah,
with me.
that makes
You know, and it was a very smooth transition for me. Secretary Gardner was a fantastic teacher, and we worked really closely and well together over the years. And so the actual processes that we undertake when we're conducting election were really easy to move into with the transition. We do face challenges. Every election poses its own set of challenges. And 2 years ago, of course, we had the pandemic election.
yes.
And any election official, whether state or local,
Right.
knew that the effort that was required was extraordinary. And thankfully, that has calmed down quite a bit for this election, and we're more back to normal in terms of turnout, the number of absentee ballots that are requested, polling places being open. So that's going to be smooth. I
When you
believe.
mention what we went through with COVID, how did we survive that? It was the leadership at the top. I mean, you had to direct everything from the supplies that we had, how we should manage the flow of people, keeping everyone safe. What if someone didn't feel that they could come in? We had to change our rules around absentee ballots. Oh my goodness, my hat goes off to you and to so many people, and all of us here.
I was going to
you know, on
say you
every
guys
front.
as well. I
Oh
mean,
my gosh.
And that was my first
First
election as
I know.
moderator.
Jonathan has just.
welcome.
Welcome aboard.
Oh
It's
my
all downhill from here.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness, and the residents, because truly without them being willing to follow what we were asking and what we needed to do for safety, you know, it really took a village. So my gosh, it's hard to believe now.
So Secretary Scanlan, you mentioned that New Hampshire's in the top 1, 2, or 3, which is a great compliment to our state and to all of us who were involved in the elections. What separates us? What makes New Hampshire special, different, worse, better? I'm not sure how to phrase the question, but I assume you are familiar with operations in other states, so.
But New Hampshire is really unique in a number of ways. First, most states have to comply with the National Voter Registration Act of 1993, which is also known as Motor Voter. And New Hampshire has an exemption to that act because we have and had at the time same-day voter registration. And so any voter could show up at the polling place, register to vote, and once that was done, they could actually cast their ballot and have it counted on the day of the election. The motor voter states have a different process by which voters can be registered. One is they can do it at the Division of Motor Vehicles anytime they go in to renew a driver's license or register their vehicle.
Interesting.
I know,
They
it's
have
different.
the opportunity to sign up. They can simply mail in postcards that are voter registration forms. They don't go directly to the town clerk. They could go to any voter registration agency, which is not just the Secretary of State's office or a town clerk's office, but it could be the Division of Motor Vehicles, it could be the Department of Education, it could be the Department of Health and Human Services. And so that's how voters get on the rolls in other states. In New Hampshire, we have kept the practice where a voter to register in New Hampshire has to do so with their local election official. So it's either directly with the town clerk or it's directly with the supervisors of the checklist. There's a personal one-on-one interaction that takes place with an election official and when they register. Our voting population is engaged politically, and part of that is because we have so many elective offices in the state, from the many offices that a person can run for at the local level, whether it's moderator or town clerk or supervisor. Some towns still elect their police chief and their road agent. Many other offices. We have the largest representative state legislature in the country, with 400 members of the House of Representatives
400.
and
So many good
24
people.
senators.
Yeah.
And so we're always in election mode, and many of our citizens have actually run and held public office. If they haven't, they know the people that have. And then we have the first presidential primary in the country, and so the presidential candidates.
We're a hot spot. Manchester becomes a hot spot.
Oh,
And so our electorate
really
they're not afraid to ask tough questions, and they're not afraid to size up the candidates, and the candidates are actually better as a result of that process. So I think we have one of the best systems in New Hampshire. When we conduct our elections, we have very few issues with them, and we just have a long track record of running really solid, accurate, and fair elections in the state.
transparency.
Yeah.
And New Hampshire leads the way, we really do, and well respected across the country. You know,
And our election process is decentralized, so while the Secretary of State is the chief election official and provides the ballots and the standards by which the elections run, it's the locally elected election officials that actually run the polling places. You know, the moderator, the clerk, supervisors of the checklist, the selectmen.
We have a very smooth system here.
We
You
really
guys
do.
have done
What
a
a
great
team.
job in past
And our
elections.
supervisors are amazing.
Oh,
They're
They-
such
we
a
do
resource
have
to
great
us.
supervisors.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I didn't know this. I've voted since I've lived here. I've lived here for over 30 years. Never occurred to me that the moderator is elected every 2 years. But the voters get to choose who they want to run their elections, and they get an opportunity every other year to do that, which I think is really a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, people like when they have more say in how things run, so I like it too.
And even though moderators are elected every 2 years, there's a lot of stability in those positions because the voting population elects them because of their integrity and their ability to do the job, and the way they conduct deliberative meetings in the town. And the voters appreciate that, so they tend to elect a solid person time
That
after
is
time.
true, that's right.
Yeah.
Experience plays
And
such a
when-
major
yeah.
factor in these positions.
And when you stepped into the role, you were so interested in learning how everything
Yeah.
works and everything. You
Yeah.
fit the role perfectly.
Well,
So
thank you.
I have to
That's-
give that to you.
That's
And
nice
always
of you.
available to us too, which makes a big difference.
Yeah.
So we've talked several times about the First in the Nation primary. I know there's some controversy around that right now. Do you have your crystal ball available?
Well, I cannot tell you when the date of New Hampshire's next presidential primary is going to be. There is a review on the part of the Democratic National Committee on who the early states should be, and they have required that states that are interested in conducting an early primary go through an application process. And New Hampshire has participated in that. However, New Hampshire has a state law which very, very clearly states that New Hampshire's presidential primary shall go at least 7 days before any similar event. And we will follow that law regardless of what happens
Excellent.
on the DNC side of things. The Republican National Committee has said they are not going to make any changes to their calendar, which will
Excellent.
start with an Iowa caucus followed by the New Hampshire primary.
Question I should probably know the answer to. I've heard it from others, though. Would it ever happen that we would have two different presidential primaries, a Republican one and a Democratic one, two separate elections?
Well, the primary is two separate
Right.
elections, but they will always happen on the same day.
Thank you.
Because it's a state-run primary, the state pays for it, and the date will be the same for both.
Okay, thank you.
So, what is your favorite part of going to work every day?
What
A little
great
mellow
What a
question.
great question.
Little mellow question. Obviously, you do a lot of travel around the state. What's your favorite part of going to work every day?
Well, every day is different. There is no
No
set
routine.
routine
No.
that takes place, and I really enjoy working with the people of New Hampshire. I enjoy working with the local election officials. I enjoy working with the members of the state legislature, and I enjoy working with members of the public. And the office has several different constituencies that way. The challenge is that when it comes to running elections have to work for everybody.
That's
And
very true.
you know, it's most important that the voters have an equal and easy opportunity to exercise the right to vote. Candidates have the right to be fairly placed on the ballot and excuse me, and campaign under the laws of the state of New Hampshire. The poll workers have to be treated fairly, and we have to make sure that the laws we pass don't place undue burdens on the process that just make the job so difficult that nobody wants to do it. And then there are all these special interest groups that are out there that are trying to push their cause and have their say in things. And you know, we just sometimes we have to be the referee in that process.
Absolutely.
So you talked about names on the ballot. This is something a lot of people don't maybe know, but what is the process of placing names on the ballot? I know it's not alphabetical, is it?
It's such a good question, and we
Or
were talking
how
about
do you
this on our
decide
other.
the order under
Oh.
each
We are so grateful you have a process.
Yes.
As town and city clerks, so many
I
people
don't know if you
think
wanna
that
explain
we
that.
determine that.
I learned
But
that
yes,
from
it's-
Sherry, that it was actually the Secretary of State. It was your office that
It's a
decides the
wonderful
order
system.
of candidates on a ballot. So do you want to explain how you go about
And it's used in town elections and
And
state
state
elections,
elections,
so
yeah.
thank
Yeah.
goodness.
Yeah, so the process starts with the filing period, whether it's for a town election or whether it's for the state election. And the candidates come in during a set period of time, and
10-day
they
period.
fill out their declarations of candidacy and submit them. And then, once the field of candidates is determined, we go through the process of creating the ballot. And when it comes to the placement of the candidates' names, we start by, well, on a state ballot, for the top tier offices where it's elect one, there is a requirement in the statute that those names be rotated as equally across the state as possible, so that the candidates appear in the first, second, third positions, and however many candidates there are, as equal a number of times as is reasonably possible.
I didn't know
I
that.
did not know that
Yeah.
either.
So the ballots aren't the same in each community then?
They are not.
I did
Interesting.
not
They're
know
not.
that either.
And then when it comes to the office of state representative, county commissioner in some cases, delegates to the Republican convention, where there are sometimes multiple candidates elected for an office. Excuse me, the law requires that we take the list of candidates and arrange them in alphabetical order. And then we assign those candidates a number one
Number,
through
right.
however many candidates there are in that race. And if there's 5 candidates and we draw the number 3, the third candidate in that alphabetical list will go first,
Which is incredible.
followed by 4, 5, and then 1 and 2. And once we do that random drawing, it's a public event, and we do it after the filing period closes for state office. It's good for a 2-year period, and it's highly recommended that the cities and the towns use that same drawing when they lay out the ballots for their local races. And what that does is it eliminates any accusation.
Truly,
You know,
right.
it wasn't a really
You had a
random
favorite.
See,
Right.
process.
Yeah.
we do get people
We
who
do.
not understand
Yeah,
that there is a
yeah.
process to the
Exactly. So that was a great question to
order
ask.
of
Yes.
names on the ballot. So
It really is
The way that occurred was that the state used to just list the names alphabetically and put them on the ballot. So somebody that had a last name that started with A would always be first on the ballot, right down through the alphabet. The argument in favor of that is that, especially for local races, the voters tend to know who's on the ballot. And if it's in alphabetical order, it's easy to find the person's name. But there was an argument that was made 20 years or so ago that there is a supremacy effect where the person who has the first
I've heard that.
position,
They always
has-
tend to
has
pick
a
the first.
benefit.
Yes.
and there have been studies done by academics that would support that argument. And so there was a court case, and the judge in that case ruled that there has to be some type of a random drawing process so that every candidate has an opportunity, an equal opportunity to be in the first position on the ballot. And so that's how we came up with a process. The legislature took it up, and they passed a law.
Interesting.
Are we the only state who follows that process?
I'm sure that we are not the only state that randomizes the listing of the order of names. I believe that there are still some states that just do the alphabetical. list.
Interesting.
And Sherry, I remember for the March election, that the process is clearly laid out.
Thank
I don't want to
goodness,
say
yes.
it's complicated, but we have to pay attention. And
We-
you and I
we re-
reviewed that list of
yes, yeah.
candidates 2 or 3 times to make sure that we had
And
done
even
it
had
correctly.
some other eyes on it, our town manager. I mean, we really want to make sure, because when you're running, that's a big part of your candidacy, and you can't wait to see where your name falls.
Yep.
So yes, but I, again, so grateful that the state has laid that out for us, because then there isn't any room for doubt. And a candidate, if they have questions, we can present what they need to follow, and they can see that we followed exactly what we needed to. Because running is no easy task either. You know, it takes a lot for a person and out of a person to take the chance and put themselves out there to run. So we
And
want to
Sherry,
make it
our
fair.
viewers may know that you and I have filmed several little short TV shows about our elections here in Londonderry, and in one of them we talked about this very thing and how seriously we take it. Yeah, so I would encourage our viewers to tune in to
Absolutely.
the
And
others
we know
as well.
from running for office that it really is important, and you
Yeah.
want everything to be equitable and fair across the board. It has to be.
And much of the work, almost all of the work we do is covered by statute. I mean, we don't just make this up as we go
Absolutely
along.
is,
The
right.
statutes are.
And in our other shows, we actually had the Constitution book, we had our election law book, and thank goodness. And I can't thank you enough as one of your town clerks that, you know, what I love is when I call the Secretary of State's office, I can say, can I speak to Dave? And I really should say, you know, it's Secretary Scanlan, but, and Dave gets on the phone. And I mean, as a clerk, when you have a question or you have a resident in front of you who needs an answer, you know, or if I send an email, boom, you know, which is thank you, because that really means a lot to all of us town and city clerks. So then I'm sure that we're just one part of your responsibility, everyone else too.
And even on election day, the hotline that, you know, there's a special number for moderators to call
Yes.
with the Attorney General and the Secretary of State, because questions come up, and it's important we do the right thing to support our voters. So I echo what Sherry said. Thank you for that. And when I travel around the country and talk to friends and relatives, I say, here in New Hampshire, we're helping to run the elections in our community, and we can call the Secretary
We
of State
really
and
can.
he'll be available.
Yeah.
And it doesn't happen in many other states,
No,
I
it
don't
does
think.
not. Or even asking you to come and be on the Londonderry View.
Yeah.
You know, again, it's an honor for us, but this is just one more big thing. I know you have election training classes, 2, not 1, from Wolfboro to up north, wasn't it? That, you know, I mean, there's a lot that goes into us, and I know that one of your goals as our Secretary of State is education, you know, for all of us that are, you know, working on the fronts, but also for the residents and the voters, so that they really have an understanding of how this all happens, because we had no idea until we took on these positions. And there is so much behind the scenes, you know, so many good people, your office staff. I mean, they're just incredible, and I don't want to list them all because I'll leave someone out,
Please
but
don't.
you know, everyone works together, so, you know.
And
great
we love to
process.
have our residents engaged in helping us with the elections as poll workers, when we test the machines before an election, because we think that transparency provides education, and an educated voter is helpful to us.
Right, to spread the word.
So the more we can help
really is.
with that
Networking, the
education.
biggest, you know, one person tells another person, and we want that information to be the correct information that's out there. And, you know, it's and something we do in Londonderry, we have training classes for our poll workers, and if they're going to be like in intricate parts of things, if they don't attend the training, then they have to be a greeter or other, because it's such a vital role. And like anything, we only, you know, they only do it maybe once, maybe one year, that might be 4 times a year, but you don't do it all the time, and repetition is important in these
And the laws
things.
change as well.
And the laws change with the
So-
legislation, you're right.
Yeah.
So you hit on the topic that really is the challenge that we have in this election cycle. And because of the rhetoric nationally and, you know, statements being made about whether an election was stolen, or, you know, there were problems elsewhere around the country, you know, it makes our job more challenging,
It does.
because we're under more scrutiny now as election officials. And even though our processes haven't changed, and New Hampshire in particular has kept their election process very simple, it's important for the voters to know that the local election officials are your neighbors and your peers.
Truly.
You elect them because you trust the job that they do. But beyond that, those individuals do take the time to train themselves on the process, and they use the resources that the state provides to get the information that they need. And But at the same time, there's a lot of extraneous messaging out there from different groups that kind of cloud the accuracy of the facts and what's actually taking place. So this year we are stressing a couple of things, and one really important one is that if you have questions about elections, it's your local election officials and it's your state election officials and the Attorney General's office that are the accurate source of election information. So if you have a question, you can believe the answer that you get from an election official. And if they don't know it, they'll say that, but they will get the right answer for you, so you know. And then the other important thing that we're stressing is just the need to be transparent. We have nothing to hide in our election process. There are many checks and balances that are built into the process on Election Day. You know, anything from the ballot clerks, which the official title is Inspector of Election, but the ballot clerks are actually appointed by the political parties.
They truly are,
There's a
right?
Republican and there's a Democrat that are working together at a check-in table to issue the ballot and mark a name off the checklist. So there are eyes on that process. The parties are entitled to official challengers
Absolutely.
in the polling place, so they can actually monitor what's going on. And in fact, any member of the public, any voter can observe the election process in its entirety from the time that the moderator opens the polls through the time
the
that the results are announced and the polls closed. And there's nothing that is done behind the scene. It's all out in the open, and the voters really need to know that.
They really do.
And you know, we can always use help at the polling
We sure
places,
can.
and it's a great public service and a great public duty if you can volunteer your time to help
be a
on
part
the day
of
of
it.
the election and actually
Absolutely.
be a part of it and see what
Right.
happens. And it's that collective effort. You know, many hands doing a job makes light work, but it also makes it very difficult to you know, inappropriately change results
Yes.
and follow through on some of the accusations that we've heard being made about how elections are
It
conducted.
kind of breaks your heart when you hear those, because if you're in it, you know the checks and balances and the resources that are available. But there's also that human element, and humans that have worked 12 hours, 16 hours, 24 hours, errors can happen, and it's not intentional. And you know, and that's always, it really does kind of hurt your heart, because you know, everyone's story is a little different and everyone does the extreme best they can. But when things happen, we go to you, and you know, and you always are very good about, okay, this is what we're going to do. Transparency every step of the way.
And
You know.
to build on that point, you mentioned getting our folks involved in working the elections. And a friend of mine didn't used to, but now is one of our poll workers, and reading all the national stories and whatnot about, as you mentioned, the stolen election. What he said to me the other day was, at least I trust the process in Londonderry,
Oh, I
because
love
I've been
that.
involved and I
Right.
understand it. So I don't know what's happening around the rest of the country, but
Right.
I know we're
Our
doing
little
well here.
corner of the
Yeah,
world. I
yeah.
like that, Jonathan. It's very true.
Yeah, and that's the goal. And this is that the local voters should be comfortable with how it's being run in their
In their town.
polling place. And if we can do that in every polling place across the state,
Absolutely.
we know we've done a good job.
And you've also had great educational classes to unite and network, like the moderators, they have their group, and you've had classes offered virtually, in person, for moderators, for the town and city clerks throughout the state, residents, there's informational classes there. So there's just a lot of good information out there. It's just everyone has to reach out and grab it and learn,
Exactly.
you know, as
Yep.
we did, as we had to.
As we continue to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate you coming on the show
This has been
and answering our
wonderful.
questions. There's a lot of things I didn't know either.
Oh my
so
Yeah, I learned something today as well.
yeah.
Yeah.
Who
Absolutely.
knew?
So any closing comments,
Yes.
any words of wisdom for us before we sign off?
Well,
Make
just,
sure to vote.
Please
that's-
come out and
that's-
vote.
that's the thing. you know.
Every vote is so important.
It is incredibly important, and it really is a special right that every voter has, and it's your voice
Really
when
is
it comes
your
to
voice.
electing the people that are going to represent you. And it's important that your voice be heard through that vote.
For that one vote, exactly.
It matters.
And one vote can make such a difference
does.
because we know elections have been lost by one vote.
Yep.
You know, so everyone needs
Even
to.
after recounts.
Yes, even
so.
after recounts. Which, you know, maybe on another show we should talk about those because that's a fascinating process to be part of at the state level. But yes, we can't thank you enough for being with us.
Yes, we
I'm happy to be
appreciate
here.
it.
Yeah, this
Thank
was
you so
wonderful.
much.
But
And when is the primary?
September 13th in Londonderry. Our polls open at 6 a.m. and close at 8
So-
p.m.
PM.
Yes, so.
Be here before we know it.
Yeah, it's quite a process. Many good people arrive at 5 and may leave at 5 in the morning. You never can tell.
Never
You
can
know,
tell.
We just want those voters to come out and make all of that worthwhile. Speak with your feet. Absentee ballots is another realm that we all have
Yep.
available if you're going to be out of town, disabled. But call your town and city clerk's office, Secretary of State's office, and we can answer questions. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Our pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Thank
Yes,
you
of
so
course.
much. Thank you.